you're your family's scapegoat and you don't even realize it. You know that feeling that, no matter what, the blame always ends up falling on you? As if there were an invisible script inside your own house where, in the end, you are always the responsible one even when, deep down, you know it doesn't make sense? Well, this is not coincidence, nor bad luck. There is a psychological pattern behind it, and it is more common than it seems. Within many families, especially in a toxic family, there is a silent and painful role called the scapegoat. This role arises within family dynamics as an unconscious way of maintaining the emotional balance of the group, even if it comes at the cost of someone's mental health. And guess who usually occupies this place? Precisely those who feel, perceive, and question the most. Throughout this content, you will deeply understand the psychology of the scapegoat, how emotional projection shapes family roles, and why it may all have started back in childhood trauma. Most importantly, you'll figure out how to get out of this cycle, rebuild your self-identity, and start your own healing journey without carrying guilt that was never yours. There is something curious about family dynamics that few people realize at first glance. Not every conflict is said out loud. Often, the atmosphere is heavy, the looks change, the silence speaks loudly. But no one names what is happening. In a toxic family, this invisible tension becomes almost part of the decor. You feel it, but you can't explain it. And it is in this environment that the role of scapegoat begins to form, almost without anyone noticing. Small everyday situations across comment, constant criticism, a blame thrown in a subtle way shape who will be held accountable. Gradually, the psychology of the scapegoat comes into play, creating a pattern that seems normal but is far from healthy. If you've ever had the feeling that you're always walking on eggshells, trying to avoid conflict, and still end up taking the blame, this is not your exaggeration. It is a reflection of emotional projection and family roles that have been built over time, often since childhood trauma. And the most interesting or worrying thing is that all this happens in such a subtle way that it seems inevitable, but it is not. In many family dynamics, the role of scapegoat is not chosen at a clear moment. It is built gradually, almost like a silent agreement. You can start with something simple. You were the first to question, the most sensitive, or the one who didn't fully fit in. In a toxic family, that's enough to put you in the spotlight. But not in the way you'd like. Over time, small situations become evidence against you. If something goes wrong, your name appears. If there is tension in the environment, you become the reason. This happens because of emotional projection. Feelings that others can't handle are displaced to you. And so, without realizing it, the family roles solidify, creating a narrative where you start to carry an internalized blame that was never really yours. An important point here, and one that few people talk about, is that this moment of choice is usually linked to the family's collective childhood trauma. Sometimes, you've just occupied an empty space within that system. Therefore, understanding the psychology of the scapegoat is not about pointing blame, but about seeing the pattern. And when you start to see, something inside you also begins to change. The role of scapegoat within a family goes far beyond taking the blame. It functions as a centerpiece within family dynamics, almost like an emotional lightning rod. In a toxic family, this person ends up absorbing tensions, conflicts, and frustrations that no one else wants to face, as if they were responsible for keeping the rest of the system running. In practice, this means that the scapegoat is often criticized, invalidated, or even isolated. And the most curious thing is that this does not happen because this person is problematic, but often because he is the one who most notices the inconsistencies. The psychology of the scapegoat shows that this role arises precisely to protect the family from looking at their own patterns, using emotional projection as the main mechanism. Over time, these patterns become part of family roles and begin to profoundly shape the self-identity of those who occupy this place. The person starts to doubt themselves, to carry a constant internalized blame and to normalize situations of emotional abuse. And when it starts back in childhood trauma, the effects can extend throughout life, often without the person realizing where it all started. It may seem harsh to accept, but families don't create a scapegoat by chance. There's a psychological function behind it. Within family dynamics, especially in a toxic family, this role emerges as a way to avoid emotional chaos. Instead of facing real conflicts, the family organizes the pain by putting everything in a single person. This process is deeply linked to emotional projection. Feelings such as frustration, envy, guilt, or inadequacy are difficult to face, so they are projected onto scapegoat. Thus, the other members preserve a more comfortable image of themselves. It's like sweeping dirt under the rug, except in this case, the rug is a person. And this further reinforces the family roles within the system. The most intriguing thing is that this mechanism maintains a kind of dysfunctional balance. The psychology of the scapegoat shows that by centering the problem on someone, the family avoids profound change. But this balance comes at a high cost. It feeds internalized blame, reinforces patterns of emotional abuse, and perpetuates marks of childhood trauma. And it is precisely there that the need to break this cycle begins to take shape. But we will delve into this later. Emotional projection is like a silent psychological game. Someone feels something uncomfortable, anger, guilt, insecurity, and without realizing it, they put it on someone else. Within a toxic family, this process happens frequently, and the scapegoat becomes the main target. It is as if you were a mirror where others see what they cannot accept in themselves. Now comes an even deeper concept, the so-called projective identification. Here, it's not just about projecting, it's about making the other begin to feel and act according to what was projected. That is, within family dynamics, scapegoat may begin to believe that it really is difficult, problematic, or wrong. A psychology of the scapegoat explains how this directly contributes to internalized blame. And hey, race, a practical point for you to observe: have you ever noticed if you apologize even when you're not sure what you've done? Or do you feel guilty just for existing in certain environments? These are clear signs that emotional projection may have been internalized since childhood trauma. The first step of the healing journey is to start questioning these automatic emotions like a detective of your own mind, because not all the guilt you feel, it really belongs to you. Hey race, one of the most surprising points from psychology of the scapegoat: often, the scapegoat isn't the most problematic in the family, but rather the most sensitive and conscientious. Within family dynamics, this person often notices emotional nuances that others ignore. And, ironically, it is precisely this awareness that makes it a threat to the balance of a toxic family. Think with me: those who question standards, perceive injustices, and do not accept certain dynamics automatically end up destabilizing the system. And how does the family respond? Reinforcing family roles and using emotional projection to silence this awareness. Thus, the scapegoat starts to carry labels that do not reflect who he really is, which further feeds the internalized blame. But hey race, an important twist: this sensitivity is not weakness, it's power. Many people who have gone through childhood trauma and have occupied this role develop an unusual empathy, a keen emotional reading, and a deep search for truth. And when that awareness is directed to the healing journey and self-identity, it can become the key to something even greater, including cycle breaking. When the role of scapegoat begins in childhood, it doesn't just stop at behavior, it enters into the basis of self-identity. Within these family dynamics, the child learns, little by little, that there is something wrong with him. And not because someone said it directly all the time, but between the lines, the reactions, the constant climate of criticism and tension in a toxic family. This process generates what we call internalized blame. The child starts to interpret any problem as his fault, even when there is no logical relationship. This connects directly to childhood trauma, because the developing brain tries to make sense of the environment. And in this innocent reasoning, it is safer to believe that the problem lies in itself than to admit that the family system is unstable or unfair. In practice, this can appear in very common ways: excessive fear of making mistakes, constant need for approval, difficulty in saying no. A simple exercise to start observing this is to ask yourself, does this guilt I'm feeling right now have a real cause, or is it automatic? This type of questioning is already part of the healing journey. Because, little by little, you start to separate who you are of the role you were made to believe you should be. When internalized blame becomes constant, it begins to shape something even deeper: a false self. The scapegoat, within these family dynamics, learns to adapt to survive emotionally. In a toxic family, this means hiding parts of yourself, pleasing yourself excessively, or even assuming an identity that doesn't reflect who you really are. This false self works as a kind of protective mask. He avoids conflicts, tries to anticipate problems, and seeks approval at any cost. But there is a high price in this: the disconnection from one's own self-identity. A psychology of the scapegoat shows that the longer a person lives in this character, the harder it becomes to recognize their own real desires, boundaries, and emotions, which also perpetuates cycles of emotional abuse. A practical sign of this is when you ask yourself, who am I when I'm not trying to please anyone? It sounds simple, but it can be uncomfortable. That's why a useful strategy in the healing journey is to start small: identify basic preferences, what you like, what bothers you, and validate them without guilt. This process, while subtle, is essential to cycle breaking, because dismantling the false self is actually a reunion with who you've always been. What begins in family dynamics is hardly limited to childhood. The pattern of the scapegoat tends to repeat itself in adulthood, especially in relationships and at work. Without realizing it, the person may become involved with partners, friends, or bosses who reinforce the same family roles, where they continue to be blamed, criticized, or emotionally burdened. This happens because internalized blame and the false self create a kind of autopilot. The person tolerates more than he should, avoids confrontations, and assumes guilt that is not his own. In professional environments, for example, she may end up being the one who holds everything, but rarely receives recognition. In personal relationships, however, they can fall into emotional abuse dynamics, thinking that they need to deserve affection or approval. Here is a powerful practical exercise: observe patterns. Ask yourself, has this happened before, to other people? If the answer is yes, it is a clear sign of repetition. The good news is that by recognizing this, you are already moving forward on the healing journey. And this recognition is the first real step to cycle breaking, because you start to stop automatic choices and build healthier relationships, based on your true self-identity. Every family, healthy or not, seeks a kind of balance, and this is called homeostasis. Within a toxic family, however, this balance is maintained through dysfunctional patterns. The role of scapegoat is essential in this system, because it helps sustain the family dynamics without profound changes having to happen. It works like this: when someone tries to get out of the role, question, or change their behavior, the system reacts. More criticism, guilt, or even emotional withdrawal may arise. This is because family roles were structured to keep everything as it is. The psychology of the scapegoat shows that this resistance is not conscious; it is an automatic attempt to preserve balance, even if it involves emotional abuse and internalized blame. Therefore, during the healing journey, it is common to feel that everything has gotten worse before it gets better. You start saying no, imposing limits, and it seems that the world is collapsing. But, in fact, what is happening is a shock to the system. A practical step here is to strengthen your self-identity outside of this environment, whether with therapy, reading, or new social circles. Because true cycle breaking requires the courage to sustain change, even when the system tries to pull you back. There is something that almost no one tells you about the role of scapegoat. Despite all the pain, he also develops extraordinary strengths. Within these difficult family dynamics, especially in a toxic family, this person learns to read environments, understand emotions, and adapt with a rare sensitivity. A psychology of the scapegoat reveals that what seemed like weakness, it is often actually an advanced type of emotional intelligence. Having experienced emotional projection and often emotional abuse from an early age, the scapegoat develops deep empathy. He can perceive what is not said, identify patterns, and even anticipate behaviors. This, when well directed, can turn into valuable skills both in relationships and in professional life. Many end up excelling in areas such as communication, mindful leadership, or even helping others on their own healing journey. But here is the key point: this power is only fully revealed when there is consciousness. While the person is still stuck in internalized blame and the old family roles, these qualities become distorted. They become self-demanding, overload, and difficulty in prioritizing themselves. Therefore, recognizing this potential is an essential part of self-identity and cycle breaking. Because, at the end of the day, what hurt you? It can also be what makes you stronger depending on how you choose to use it. Getting to this point in your healing journey doesn't mean that everything is already resolved, but it does mean that you've begun to see clearly. And that changes everything. When you understand the psychology of the scapegoat, you realize that the role of the scapegoat has never defined who you are, but only the place you have occupied within the family dynamics. True cycle breaking starts with small but consistent decisions. Saying no without justifying yourself too much, recognizing when you are assuming an internalized blame that makes no sense, and, above all, stop accepting patterns of emotional abuse as something normal. In a toxic family, this can lead to discomfort, but it's part of the process of rebuilding your self-identity. If you want to make this more practical, start with 3 simple steps. First, write down recent situations in which you felt guilty and question whether the responsibility was really yours. Second, look for references that reinforce your vision, such as the book The Courage to Displease. Third, create a safe, yet small, environment where you can be yourself. Because, in the end, the healing journey isn't about becoming someone new, it's about getting back to who you've always been, without the weight you should never have carried. If you've made it this far, you may be starting to see your story with different eyes. So tell me, how many times have you assumed an internalized blame that wasn't even yours? How many decisions in your life have been guided by this role of scapegoat within family dynamics? These questions are not easy, but they are liberating. The truth is that recognizing these patterns is already a huge step in your healing journey. Even if you're still in a toxic family or dealing with remnants of emotional abuse, there's one thing no one can take away from you: awareness. And it is this that paves the way for cycle breaking and the reconstruction of your self-identity. Now I want to leave you with a simple but powerful invitation. What can you do, even today, to stop carrying a guilt that is not yours? It can be something small: a limit, a reflection, a different choice. And if this content made sense to you, enjoy and subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and continue on this journey with me. Because understanding the psychology of the scapegoat can even start as a learning experience. But, deep down, it is the beginning of a real transformation.